Hi guys! So a few of the projects I've had planned recently have had to be put on hold for apocalypse reasons. So I'm improvising a little, but today I am trying something that I've wanted to make for a long time. It's an Edwardian style maid's apron. I say Edwardian, it's like just turn of the century, so really that cusp between late Victorian and early Edwardian. This isn't an especially complicated project, but as always with me, there is a degree of winging it. And also, I'm a little bit limited by the materials I have available, since obviously it's not like I can just go out to the fabric shop. So I'm trying to make do with what I've got, which to be fair is a shit ton of crates of fabric. So like it's not a terrible hardship. I'm just being a dick. So let's talk about aprons. The British Census of 1891 found that 1.3 million women and girls worked as domestic servants, 1 in 3 women between the ages of 15 and 20. That number does decrease a little by the census of 1911, but it's not really until the First World War that the number of domestic servants in Britain really starts to drop off. Something really cool that I did find looking at the 1891 census is a record of some of my ancestors, including Elizabeth Broster, which is, Elizabeth is my middle name, who worked as a domestic servant. She was only 14 in 1891. So it's the fashion of the late Victorian, early Edwardian period that I think we most associate with maids and their uniforms, which were a big deal because, like, heaven forbid, the working class were allowed to be individual humans. However, they were really cute looks. So, like, you see how having an interest in fashion history can be just a fine line to walk, morally. So these are some of the images I'm using as a reference, but I'm not going overboard with a pattern as such here. What I'm using as the starting point is the very technical method of a long piece of ribbon to decide how long I want the waist ties to be. For me, that's about 86 inches. And I want them to be about 2 inches wide, plus a 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides. Basically, I'm cutting 2 of all the straps, mostly to make extra work for myself, but also because I want to hide all my seams and my gathered bits so that it's really neat on the reverse side. I'm sure that's going to be super worth it. There are a few problems with my original plan. I'm making this of fabric left over from my 1880s bustle project, and while it may look like a lot of material, it isn't. Also, it's quite thick, it's maybe not ideal, but it's what I've got, so. Bear in mind that the skirt is gathered, which means I need to cut it to double the width it'll eventually be. I can do this, but because of the way the fabric's been cut previously, the maximum length I can get is 30 inches, when in my drafting phase, I plan to cut at 35. I think this might still be okay because I'm not especially tall, but it reduces my hem margin and it means I can't do stuff like the pleats and the pin tucks I'd envisaged. I am consoling myself by thinking if I do want it to be longer later, I can add on like some ruffles and decoration and stuff, so. It also means that I'll have to sacrifice my long waistband / ties, which is a pain in the arse because now I'll have to piece it together. While piecing is historically accurate since the dawn of time, so I was kind of bummed out by this, and I looked online to see some other apron patterns, and actually I found that Angela Clayton made a very similar style apron to this, albeit set maybe like 15 years later. And she does do the waistband in 3 pieces, so then I felt a little bit better. So, first of all, I'm joining these waist pieces together. I've allowed for 1/2 inch seam allowances so that once it's joined, it'll still be 86 inches. I'm sewing a double fold hem on both sides of the skirt piece. I'm leaving the bottom hem for later when I can get a better view of the length. I'm then gathering and basting it down to just under my waist measurement and sandwiching it between the middle third of the waistband pieces. I'll fold everything inwards and top stitch all the way along that bottom join. So far, pretty straightforward. I've got approximate measurements for the shoulder straps based on measuring. I don't fucking know. But I'm using the very technical method before I cut those to check it, which is the tried and tested ribbon technique. Now I'm just calling any old thing a technique. Again, I'm cutting 4 of all of these straps plus a yoke, which is 8 inches at the top, 3 inches at the bottom, and 8 inches in length. I'm hemming the top edge and decorating the yoke before I go any further to keep things tidy. This is actually really similar to the front panel of my 1916 dress, which had lace and pin tucks. Legally, no one is allowed to comment on how wonky those pin tucks are, so we won't discuss those. I'm also doing some scalloped edge lace along the top because I feel like it finishes it off nicely. What I'm really trying out today is insert lace, since that's something that features a lot in the period that I haven't tried before. This, I'm basically pinning the lace where I want it on the yoke and then sewing down both sides of it. I'm then going to flip it over and cut down the center of the fabric between the two lines. I'm ironing this as flat as possible. I say as possible because this is very cheap lace and I'm extremely worried it will melt. And then I'm using a zigzag stitch to go over that join. Finally, trim away the excess fabric. As per tradition, it has come out slightly wonky still. That's how you know I made it. Like the skirt, I'm sandwiching the sides of the yoke between the straps for a clean join, folding the edges in like bias binding and top stitching over it. There must be an easier way of doing this. Am I being dumb? It's ruffle time, baby, and I'm not swimming in leftover fabric, so I'm just working with what I've got. I wanted the ruffles to go right down to the waist like in this photo, but instead they're just going over the shoulders. That's 18 inches in total. So my strips are 36 inches because I can do maths. Hemmed, trimmed with lace, and gathered down to 18. This all gets pinned into the folded edge of the straps and top stitched. Now I'm literally just attaching the top and bottom pieces. Everything is again getting tucked into the folded edge of the waistband with the straps crossed over at the back. It's getting pinned, it's getting ironed, it's getting top stitched. Smashed it. So I had planned to make pockets for this, and I do actually still have enough fabric left over, but I'm swiftly running out of white thread and I don't really want to risk it. Also, I'm tired. So instead I'm hemming the bottom and I am calling it done. This is quite a quick project, and if you don't do all the extra trim and insert lace and stuff, it's even quicker. The one thing I'm kicking myself over is I pinned the back of the straps based on how it looked on the mannequin, forgetting for the 400th time that my torso is longer than my mannequin's torso. So this sits just a little bit higher on my natural waist than I would prefer. It's negligible, but I know about it and I'm annoyed. I could fix it fairly easily by unpicking and adjusting those straps. There is enough seam allowance. But the thing about that is that I can't be bothered. So if I do come back later and I do pockets, I will make that adjustment. The back is my favorite. I think it's super pretty. You said you wanted to be out. What do you want? It's not tea time. Stop being a knob. Now I love you too, but stop it.